Hello and welcome to this series where we are going to build a password manager. Now, the whole idea of this is that we do a little bit of programming every day and try to work towards a large goal. So we're going to break it down into pieces. We're going to attempt to solve little pieces of the puzzle as we go along, and all of those small contributions will hopefully add up to a very big program. And well, not a very big program, but a big kind of project program to create, and something that you can hopefully be fairly proud of. Now, it's important that through this series you take your time here. Okay, if you want to kind of go back and look over something or play with something and try something out, then I really encourage you to do that, and kind of don't see this as you following this word for word, line for line, but use it as inspiration, use it as guidance, and play with it a little bit and explore. And exploration is kind of a really big thing, a really key thing to you being able to properly learn how to program. And so we're going to do this little and often, okay? These videos aren't going to be very long. I'm not going to spend lots of time programming every night, but it's more about the perseverance and committing ourselves to a long-term goal and being able to work away at it over a series of days, maybe weeks, depending on how long this takes us. So let's get into it. I'm going to be building this in this IDE called repl.it. You are more than welcome to use your own IDE of choice. There's idle that comes pre-installed with Python. There's PyCharm. There's Visual Studio Code. There's also, I don't know if Visual Studio runs Python, but there are loads of software that you could use. I'm using this because it's nice, it's easy, it's free, and everything's stored on the cloud, so it's nice and portable for me. If you are going to use repl.it and don't have an account, just press the sign up button when you get there. If you do have an account, obviously we're just going to log in. I'm going to log in with my Google account, and we will jump in. Okay, lovely. And we are going to make a new REPL project for this. So it's going to be a Python project, and I am going to call it Password Manager. If you wanted to call it something different and more exciting, that's absolutely fine. I'm going to stick with Password Manager because it is very clear and obvious to me what that is. And I'm going to press create. Make sure you've selected Python. Otherwise, you might run into trouble down the line. Okay, so what we've got here is our project. So we've got our output on the right-hand side here, okay? We've got our text editor in the middle where we can type our code. And on the right-hand side, we have our main Python file. Now, through this project, I'm probably going to be working in separate files quite a lot and then combining them in main.py. I'm going to try and keep things quite separate and quite modular so that when we're building things, we can focus on one thing at a time, okay? In order to be able to test different modules, so let's just make a new file here, and let's just call it, I don't know, test.py, okay? Now, if I type in a line of Python here, print testing, okay, then when I run this, nothing's going to happen because I've not told it to run test.py, okay? Now, what I can do is in main, I can say import test, and I think that should just run. Yeah, and so you can see there it's run testing. It's run this code when I imported it. Okay, so we're going to kind of be using that idea. But if I just wanted to test test.py on its own, and I don't want to run the main function, and I want to have a bit of control over what file I'm running, then we need to add in a configuration file. So this configuration file is called .repl.it, okay? Looks like that, .repl.it. And we're just going to give it some parameters. So we're going to say language is equal to Python 3, because that's the programming language we're using. And we are going to say run equal. So what's going to happen when we press the run button? Well, we want to use the Python 3 language to run test.py. Okay. Now, before, without this, when we ran it, we got nothing. I used import test and we got testing up here. Now I've taken away import test, but I've added in this file. I should be able to press run, and you can see there it's run Python 3 test.py. Okay, so we've got a little bit of control now, and I can change this back to main. and now it will run main instead of test. Okay, and we just got a little bit of control over what file we're running. And so in the future, we can, I'm just going to delete that because obviously it's just a test. In the future, we can just have a bit more control over that. Okay, the very first thing I like to do in any program is just print a line to the user and just say, welcome to such and such app. Just so that it's very clear kind of the program's loaded and it's started. It's not very, if your program kind of does nothing at the start, sometimes it can be a bit confusing. Like, has it started? Is it just kind of whirring away at something? Have I coded something badly? So it's nice just to have that reinforcement. So I'm just going to print a very simple thing. So let's say something like, welcome to password manager. And should we track the version? It's a bit much, but let's do it. I'm going to say every day I'm going to increase the version, and every week I'll increase the main number. So let's say version equals, and we will say, this is so silly. Let's say 0.1, okay? And so this time next week, it'll be 1.1 or 1.0. I don't know. Okay, so we're going to say welcome to Password Manager, and then we're going to add our version. Okay, lovely. So this is our program so far. Ta-da! We have a password. If it welcomes you to it, then you have it. Okay. And we're also going to print a message for when the program is over, so that we know once we've hit this first message, our program is running, and once we've hit this end message, our program is over. Okay. And so there's no ambiguity. Like, is it still whirring away? So we're going to put in our end message as well. It might seem like it's a bit soon to be putting in our end message, but actually it's quite nice to define the start and the end of the program at the start, even though this is literally just two print lines at the moment. But believe me, things can and will get quite spicy quite quickly. So welcome to Password Manager. Let's say something like not thanks. Let's say I don't know, shutting down. I'm going to come back to this because I'm not too happy with the phrase shutting down, but let's say shutting down Password Manager. Okay. And so now if I run this, okay, we can see we've got a welcome and then we get our shutting down. So it's very clear that our program has ended. Okay, lovely. Now what we need is, in an ideal world, when you open an app like Microsoft Word or Photoshop, it doesn't just open and then immediately close down. There's something in the middle where you can actually do something, and we kind of need to put that in, I guess. That'll probably be the best next step. So we're going to put in a little bit of the kind of control of the main program, and then we're going to write ourselves maybe just a little to-do list of the things that we need to do to really get this ticking along. Okay, the features we'd like to put in this, because it's a good idea to kind of plan what we're going to do as we go for this. So in order to not have it immediately end, we need something that's going to keep going round and round and round and round. And for this, the programming kind of concept is a loop. Okay, we're going to have something that keeps running over and over and over again until we tell it to stop. And then when it stops, it's going to exit out. So we can have two types of loops in programming. We can have one where we give it a number and it goes around that many times, or we can give it a condition and it will go around until that condition is either true or false, okay, depending on how you've worded your condition. So we're going to use the while loop, the humble while loop, and the while loop is just going to go round and round and round and round and round and until we tell it to exit. Okay, now I could just say while true, and that's going to be an infinite while loop. And if I let's just say, no, that's not print. Let's just say, okay, so we're going to need a variable. Let's not do while true, that's just silly. So we're going to have a variable called running, okay? And we're going to say while running is equal to true. And we're going to use a double equals, not a single equals, because we want this to be comparing running to true. And we're going to have a variable called running, and we're going to set that equal to true, okay? So it's once we start our program is running. And maybe I will call it that. Program is running equals true. Okay, so while program is running. Now, it's all very well kind of being short and concise in programming and, you know, trying to use as fewer characters and as least lines of code as possible. But we're going to have to work on this every day. and it's going to be important that we can come back to it day in and day out and remember what it's doing. Okay, so there's no need to be ambiguous in our variable names, and I will try my hardest to make sure that everything is as obvious as it can be. So we start our variable up here, and let's also kind of get into the habit now of leaving comments, shall we? That's a good idea. So we're going to this controls whether the user has exited the program. Okay, and then this is our main. This is our main program loop. So all the time this is running, we've got our program going on. And what we're going to do is we're going to print, and we're going to give the user a menu, right? We're going to want them to have some options to choose, because obviously they're going to need to do something on our program. And so we're going to print a list of options, and then we are going to ask them what option they want. And if they pick the last option, then we're going to exit the program. Yeah. So if they pick exit, then we exit the program. And if we get that programmed in today, I'll be very, very happy. So let's how should we do this? Let's start a new file. Already, can you believe it? Okay, great. I've not even tested this. Let's just pop in some input. So let's say user choice, and we're going to say that is equal to input, and we're going to say just for argument's sake here, we're going to say print enter 4. Okay, and then we're going to say if user choice is equal to 4, then we are going to say program is running is equal to false. And as soon as we change program is running to false, then this while loop is going to exit, and we're going to come out to this print line. Let's just check that's working. The concept is here. It's not going to look anything like this in like 5 or 10 minutes, so don't worry. It looks a bit bad right now. So I'm going to pop in the number 4, okay, and it shuts it down. I'm going to run this again. I'm going to put in the number 3, and it says enter 4. Put in number 3, enters 4, 3, and only when I enter 4 does it shut down. Cool. We've got some kind of program here. Now, at the moment, this is very basic, so we should really add in a menu. And what we're going to do is we are going to pop in a function here. So we're going to define, let's call it main menu. Okay. And what we're going to do here is we are going to list all of the options. We're going to ask the user for a response, and then we're going to return that response to the program here. Okay, so we're going to say user choice equals, and instead of input, we're going to say main menu. And then instead of saying if user choice equals 4, we're going to say if user choice equals exit. And you're going to see why in a second. I'm thinking like 2 steps ahead right now of where we actually are, so apologies if I'm doing things in a very weird order. So we're going to use this function main menu. So we're saying user choice is equal to main menu, and we're going to define what main menu is up here. And whatever we return from main menu will be the value of user choice. Cool. So our main menu is going to have some options, right? And we're going to store them as a list. We're going to pop them all in a nice list, and then we can just go through all the options in the list and print them out one after the other. And we can also, as long as we keep exit as the last thing in the list, then we can just refer to exit as the last thing in the list, and it'll be quite easy. So we're going to have a few options in this main menu. One of them is going to be generate password. One of them is going to be retrieve. How do we spell retrieve? Oh dear, retrieve password. And one of them is going to be, we might add to these later on, like this is not an exhaustive list by any means. Generate password, retrieve password. We want to store password. And we also want to exit. Okay, fantastic. Now you might see that it's underlined here. It's just telling us that we've not used options yet, like we've defined it, but we're not using it. It's a bit over the top, but it's okay. It's quite helpful in a bigger program. So we are going to now go through all of the options. So we're going to say for option, so for each string, so when we say for option in options, like I'm about to do here, in options, okay? So for each string, so option will be this string to begin with, okay, in this array options. And then once we've done one of the loop, it will move on to this option here. I could call this X, I could say for X in options, and it would still mean this first string, and then it would mean this next string, and then the next string. It doesn't really matter. So I can say for option in options, and what we're going to do is we are going to print, and this is where we need a number. And so I've used the wrong loop. Oh no, what a nightmare. This is why it's called development, right? Because it's never perfect the first time. We try, we think about it, and sometimes it just needs a little bit of optimizing. And that's what we're going to do here. We're going to do a little bit of optimizing. We're not going to say for option and options. We're going to use a classic for I in range, okay? And we're going to tell it how many times to loop through. Well, how many times are we going to loop through? Well, we're going to loop through for as many things that are in the array, okay, for as many things that are in this list. And there are 4 things, so we could put 4, but then if we add something to the list, we'd then have to update this number in range, and that's no good. So what we're going to do instead is we're going to say we're going to go through whatever the length of our options array is. So we're going to go for I in range length of options. We are going to print out, and now this is why I had to do the for loop, because I want to print out I as well as printing out whatever's in our array of options at position I. So I is going to start at 0, okay? And the thing at position 0 is this very first thing. In an array, in a list, in Python, in most programming languages, the thing at the start is position 0, not position 1. And that is something that if you're programming, you need to get into your mind now, get into your skull, because it takes a bit of getting used to. Okay, so we're gonna then go through and round and round and round. So thing at options 0 will be this. Okay, so that's what this means. So options position 0. Well, position 0 in the options list is this. Okay, and then I increases by 1. Is it length of options yet? No, 1 is not 4. Okay, so it's still less than 4. So we go around again and we print out this thing at position 1. And then we keep going around until we get to the end. So let's just print this and see if it's working. Ah! It's working too well, if anything. So what I really need to do is right at the end here, I just need to ask for some user input before they ban me for spamming the console on repl.it. So let's say user input equals input, and we will just leave it there. So let's run this again. Okay, there we go. Fantastic. So it's done it once, okay? Now, it's not a very good user experience if we're saying that something's at position 0, because although programmers, we're kind of used to things and lists beginning at position 0, users are going to be a bit confused by that. So what we're going to do is we're going to say I plus 1. Okay, so we're going to print out I plus 1. You can see I put a comma here, and all that does is puts a space between this thing here and this thing here, and it concatenates them together. But also, I is an integer, but I don't have to cast it to a string here by putting the comma after it. If I did I plus 1 add options, I would have to wrap this in a str in order for it to work. Using the comma in my print statement means I don't have to worry about that, which is fantastic. Okay, so now I've added in that plus 1, and once this bucks its ideas up, we should see that it is 1, 2, 3, 4 rather than 0, 1, 2, 3. Maybe not though. Ooh, doesn't like it because I added in this plus. That was silly. There we go. So now we've got 1, 2, 3, and 4. And what I could do is actually, we could be clever about this. We might actually use str here, and we might add in a little bracket. Okay, and then we might have our options. And so now it's just kind of a nicer list. Yeah. So we are now going to tell the user to pick an option from the list above, yeah? So we're going to say, please pick an option from the list above. Okay, lovely. And then if I press 4, okay, now I pressed 4 and it's just repeated itself because we're taking the user input, but we're not actually doing anything with it, right? We're just returning it here. It doesn't equal exit, so do it all again, okay? Which, yeah, it's not ideal. So what we're going to do is we are going to say, if our user input, and we want to convert our user input to, no, we don't. If our user input is equal to the length of our options as a string, so let's convert that to a string. Okay, so we're going to turn that into a string. So our length is 4 at the moment, yeah? So length of options will be 4. We convert that to a string, we'll get 4. And then what we're going to do is we're going to compare it to the user input. Now, if they've typed in 4, that will also be a 4 as a string. And if it is a 4, if it is the very last thing, we know it is exit. So we're going to return exit, okay? And that's how we work out whether we are exiting or not. Otherwise, I'm having too many thoughts. Otherwise, we're going to... this doesn't really want to be here, does it? My brain's just melted a little bit. We'll continue with this. We might optimize this at a later time. I'm thinking too far ahead. It's hard to stay in the moment. Okay. Otherwise, we're going to just return our user input. Okay. And so it's really clear that they're going to exit or they just want to do something else. Okay, lovely. So, we should be able to run this now. And I'm going to press run. And I should be able to pick any option apart from 4, and I will get another repeat of that menu. So if I press 1, I get another repeat. Okay, 2, I get another repeat. As soon as I press 4, though, fingers crossed, shutting down password manager. Okay, I've pressed 4 and I've exited. Fantastic. Okay, lovely stuff. So we've kind of fleshed out a bit of our program here because we have talked about the different things that we want it to do, right? We want it to generate a password, we want it to retrieve a password, and we want it to be able to store a password. And so these are things that we're going to have to think about and implement in our program. So when the user presses 1, they get a password generated. And when the user presses 2, they get a password retrieved. And all of this really is going to happen in this main menu function, right? It's going to, if our user input is 1, we're going to generate a password. If it's 2, we're going to retrieve a password. If it's 3, we're going to store a password for them. And so really what we want to do here is we only want to return exit there. So really, I'm tempted to return false here, actually. False, and we'll return true. And we'll leave it at that, yeah. And so user choice equals main menu. And then if user choice is false, so if they don't want to continue, actually, we can condense this down. Look, so I'm saying if user choice is equal to false, program is running equals false, right? But what I could say is program is running is equal to main menu. Because if I return true, then the program, didn't mean to do that. Then the program is running and it will go again. And if it's not, then it will exit. So that's made this a little bit simpler. And then up here, we are simply going to add in some more if statements, okay? And we will then just have a kind of return true outside of this loop as well. So we might have in right at the bottom here, we might also have a return true, because at a later date, we're going to probably replace this else with some else ifs. So for instance, we might have elif user input equals 1, 1 as a string there. We are going to say generate password. And what that's going to do is launch the generate password function. Now, we've not written that yet. That's why it's underlined. But this is the kind of structure that we're going to use, right? And then down here, we're going to say, actually, we don't need to return true. We're going to say elif user input equals 2. Well, then we're going to retrieve password. So we'll run the retrieve password function. Retrieve password. And elif user input equal to 3. Oh dear. It's equal to 3. Then we are going to store a password. So we're going to say store password. And so we can see that these are the next things that we need to do to implement in our program to get this working, right? So we've now made ourselves a main menu function. And then we've got a kind of main program loop here, okay? So I'm going to call this account menu, because we are also going to log in and verify ourselves before we can actually view all the passwords, right? We don't want anyone to be able to run this and just see them all. So we need to be logged into our account to be able to see the account menu. So we also need to implement a way to log on securely. Making a little to-do list at the top here. To do. So we want to implement a way to log on securely. We want to create a generate password function, and I'm just going to copy and paste this a few times. Okay, so we want to create a retrieve password function, and we want to create a store password function. Okay, and then we're just going to update this to account menu. Okay, and then what I really want to do is I want to wrap all of this code. All this code here is just floating loose at the moment in my program, and it's just a little bit. It's just makes me nervous. Don't ask why. So we're just going to say def main. This is the main function. This is the thing that needs to be run, that runs the whole program, right? You don't need to know anything about the program apart from that you just need to run main, and everything else will just work. So we're going to say def main, and we're going to shunt all of this stuff inside of it. Bloop, there we go. And this is our main function. Now, when I press run now, absolutely nothing happens, because we have two function definitions, but there's no actual code to be run here. It's all just function definitions and a to-do list, right? So on this line here, or on any line if we wanted to, we are going to say main. Okay, so I want you to run main, and that's where we put the brackets after main. We're saying I want you to run this command, I want you to do this command, and so we're going to say do that command, and now when I run, there we go. Welcome to Password Manager 0.1. If I press 1, nothing. Name error. Name generate password is not defined. Yep, we know that. We've not implemented that yet. But you can see there that it kind of worked, right? Because I typed in 1, and then it tried to run generate password. And so it's working. And let's just check that our exit is still working. So 4, exit, shutting down Password Manager. Okay. I think we have done enough for today. This has been about half an hour of programming, and half an hour of programming every day. And we will soon have a absolutely delightful little program manager. Thank you very much for coding along with me today. And tomorrow, I think we're going to focus on logging on, right? We're going to make this nice and easy to log on and secure to log on to. And then we are going to start thinking about the actual functionality later in the week, okay? And I hopefully look forward to seeing you in the next video. Thanks for watching.